The cold in Minnesota doesn't just hurt, it feels personal. It finds the microscopic gaps in your scarf and bites down like a wild animal, freezing the moisture in your nostrils instantly. But right now, crouching behind a concrete pillar on level 4 of this abandoned structure, the sub-zero temperature is the only thing keeping me grounded. It is the only thing that feels real in a world that has suddenly turned into a nightmare. My name is Elias, and I am currently gripping a heavy maglite flashlight that I am too terrified to turn on. 10 feet away from me, in the pitch black, I can hear a sound that makes my stomach turn. It's wet, rhythmic and heavy. Slap drag, slap drag. It sounds like raw meat being thrown against the pavement, moving slowly toward the spiral ramp that leads down to the lower levels. I shouldn't be up here. I should be safe in the heated security booth at the entrance, drinking cheap coffee and scrolling through my phone, waiting for the sun to rise. I had one job, which was to sit still and do nothing, but I let my curiosity get the better of me. I broke the rules specifically. Rule number 4. I thought it was a joke, a hazing ritual for the new guy to see if he would get scared and quit on the first night. The crumpled piece of paper the previous guard left me was very specific. Rule number 4 stated, if you hear dripping water on the upper levels during a snowstorm, do not investigate. And above all, do not look at the ceiling. It seemed so ridiculous at the time. A parking garage has pipes leak. It's simple plumbing. But I looked up. God help me. I shone my light and I looked up. Now, I'm not just fighting to keep my minimum wage job. I'm fighting to get out of this concrete labyrinth before whatever I saw on the ceiling finishes peeling itself off the shadows. The wind is howling outside, masking the sound of my shallow breathing, but I know it knows I'm here. Because before I turned off my light, I saw it smile, and it had way too many teeth for something that lives in a parking lot. It started with desperation, as most terrible decisions do. I was 3 months behind on rent, and my landlord, a guy named Mr. Henderson, who smelled perpetually of cabbage and stale cigarettes, had given me a final ultimatum: pay up by Friday or get out. So, when I saw the ad on Craigslist for a night watchman at the old overflow parking structure downtown, I didn't ask questions. The pay was $25 an hour, cash, under the table. For that kind of money, I would have agreed to guard a cemetery in the middle of a lightning storm. The interview was barely an interview at all. It was more like a frantic handover. I met the supervisor, a twitchy pale man named Corbin, at the entrance booth at 10 p.m. sharp. The structure was a brutalist monstrosity of gray concrete, looming against the dark winter sky like a giant tombstone. The wind chill was already dipping to 20 below zero, and the snow was starting to pile up against the rusted metal gates, sealing us in. Corbin didn't ask for my resume, and he didn't ask if I had a criminal record. He just stood there, shifting his weight from foot to foot, glancing nervously toward the spiral ramps that led up into the dark. He handed me a heavy ring of keys, a flashlight that looked like it had been used as a hammer, and a single coffee-stained sheet of paper. "Stay inside the booth as much as you can," Corbin said, refusing to make eye contact with me. "The heater works. The radio works. Don't let anyone in after midnight." I tried to ask him about the shift duration, but he cut me off, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Listen to me. If the cops come, they aren't cops. If you see lights on the top floor, it's just a reflection. Just read the paper I gave you and follow the list to the letter. If you do that, you get paid. If you don't, well, just don't break the rules, kid." He shoved the keys into my chest, practically running toward his own car, desperate to escape the property. Then he peeled out of the lot, his tires spinning on the ice, leaving me completely alone in the deafening silence of the falling snow. I watched his taillights disappear around the corner, a sinking feeling settling in my stomach. I stepped into the booth, locked the door, and looked down at the paper he had given me. It was titled in bold, capitalized letters, "Operational Guidelines for Night Shift Personnel." I sat down, ready to laugh at the instructions, having no idea that this piece of paper was the only thing standing between me and a horrific death. The silence that settled over the parking lot after Corbin's taillights vanished was not peaceful. It was heavy, pressing against the glass of the booth like the weight of the ocean. I sat in the grimy swivel chair, the smell of stale tobacco and ozone filling my nose, and tried to rationalize the knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. It was just a job, I told myself. Just concrete and steel. But as the minutes ticked by, dragging toward midnight, The isolation began to distort my senses. The wind howling outside sounded less like air moving and more like distant voices screaming. The flickering fluorescent bulb above my head seemed to buzz in a Morse code I couldn't understand. I tried to focus on the practical. I checked the heater, kicking it with my boot when the coil dimmed, and then I turned my attention to the bank of security monitors. There were 16 screens, but only 4 were working, showing grainy, black and white views of the spiraling ramps and empty decks. They cycled automatically. Level 1, Level 2, Level 3, Level 4, loop, loop, loop. It was hypnotic. At 11:15 p.m., I decided to do my first round, mostly to prove to myself that I wasn't afraid. I grabbed a heavy mag light, zipped my parka up to my chin, and stepped out into the blizzard. The cold hit me like a physical blow, freezing the moisture in my nostrils instantly. The snow was coming down horizontally, stinging my cheeks, but inside the structure, it was strangely quiet. The concrete muffled the wind, creating a dead zone where the only sound was the crunch of my boots on the salt-scattered floor. I walked the perimeter of Level 1, shining my light into the dark corners. Shadows stretched and danced, fleeing from the beam. Every parked car looked like a crouching beast. Every pillar looked like a hiding man. As I approached the downward ramp leading to the basement levels, the ones the rules explicitly forbade, I stopped. The darkness down there was absolute. It didn't just lack light, it seemed to consume it. And then I heard it, a metallic clank, clear and sharp, echoing up from the depths. It was followed by a wet, heavy dragging sound. Scrape ... slap, scrape ... slap. It sounded like someone dragging a wet sandbag over rough concrete. "Hello," I called out, my voice cracking. "Nobody is allowed down there." The echo mocked me. "There ... there." The dragging sound stopped abruptly. I held my breath, listening, my heart hammering against my ribs. A sudden draft of warm rotting air blew up from the ramp, carrying the scent of copper and old meat. Panic, primal and overwhelming, seized me. I turned and power walked back to the booth, refusing to run, refusing to look back. When I got inside, I slammed the door and threw the deadbolt, my hands shaking. I checked the time, 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes to midnight. The lockdown rule. I watched the monitors. CAM-04, the top deck. The snow was swirling violently on the screen. And there, in the center of the frame, was the gray Honda Accord mentioned in the list, spot 402. It sat motionless under a blanket of white. But as the digital clock on the monitor clicked to 12 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds, the camera glitched. The screen tore with static, and for a single frame, a fraction of a second, the car door was open, and a tall, elongated figure was standing next to it, waving at the camera. I blinked, and the image reset. The car was closed. The figure was gone. "Just a glitch," I whispered, my voice sounding too loud in the small box. Then, the power died. The heater cut out. The lights vanished. I was plunged into darkness, illuminated only by the ghostly gray light of the snow outside. The temperature began to drop immediately. I could see my breath pluming in the air. I gripped a flashlight, ready to turn it on, but then I heard footsteps. Not the dragging sound from the basement. These were footsteps on the pavement outside. Slap, slap, slap. Bare feet, wet feet running on ice. They were coming from the blind side of the booth. They circled the structure, slow, deliberate. I sank to the floor, hiding below the window line. The footsteps stopped right in front of the door. Silence. Then a polite rhythmic knocking on the glass. Tap, tap, tap. Security. A voice called out. It was flat, devoid of inflection, like a text-to-speech program trying to sound human. "Open up, it's the police. We received a 911 call from this location." My hand twitched toward the lock. Police safety, but the rule. If the cops come, they aren't cops. And why were they barefoot? Why were there no flashing lights reflecting on the snow? "Open the door, Elias," the voice said, dropping the pretense. "It's cold out here. I want to come in." The voice changed pitch, becoming a low growl. The handle rattled violently, metal grinding on metal. Something sharp screeched down the glass, a long, agonizing sound like a nail on a chalkboard. I squeezed my eyes shut and prayed. After an eternity, the footsteps resumed, moving away, slapping toward the ramp. Slap ... slap ... slap. When the power finally flickered back on, I pulled myself up and looked out. The snow was pristine, no footprints, no tire tracks. But on the glass of the door, right at eye level, was a single, deep scratch, etched into the safety glass from the outside. The scratch on the glass became the focal point of my terror. It was proof that I wasn't hallucinating, proof that something physical and malevolent was stalking the perimeter. I spent the next hour huddled in the corner of the booth, clutching a rusty claw hammer I'd found in the desk drawer, flinching at every gust of wind that rattled the frame. The operational guidelines list lay on the desk, mocking me. I read it again, searching for a loophole, a way out, but it only offered restrictions. Don't look, don't open, don't investigate. At 1:45 a.m., the monotony of fear was broken by a sudden, blinding light. Twin beams of high-intensity halogen cut through the blizzard, sweeping across the lot like searchlights from a prison tower. I scrambled up, dropping the hammer, and looked toward the entrance gate. A car was pulling up. It wasn't a police cruiser. It was a massive, black Lincoln Town car from the late 80s, boxy and ominous. Its paint absorbing the light rather than reflecting it. It moved silently over the unplowed snow. No engine noise, no tire crunch. It glided like a shark through water, stopping inches from the barrier arm. I pressed the intercom button, my finger trembling. "We are closed," I stammered, trying to sound authoritative. "Private property." "Turn around." The car didn't move. The engine didn't idle. There was no exhaust plume in the freezing air. Slowly, the driver's side window began to roll down. I leaned closer to the glass, squinting. The interior was pitch black, a void. A hand emerged from the darkness pale, long-fingered, holding a key card. It extended toward the reader. "The system is down," I yelled. "Go away." The card reader beeped a cheerful, affirmative chirp that made my blood run cold. "Access granted." The gate arm lifted. The car rolled forward. As it passed a booth, I pressed my face to the glass, desperate to see the driver. The overhead light briefly illuminated the cabin. There was a figure behind the wheel wearing a heavy trench coat, but where the face should have been Nye's nose, mouth, there was nothing, just a smooth, fleshy surface, like wet clay or rising dough. It turned its head toward me as it passed, the blank surface rippling as if mocking an expression. I stumbled back, knocking my chair over. The car continued up the ramp, disappearing into the dark throat of the garage. I turned to the monitors. I had to track it. CAM2 showed the car gliding up to level 2. Camo 3 showed it parking in the center of the driving lane on level 3. The headlights turned off. The driver's door opened. The faceless man stepped out. He stood by the car, motionless, a silhouette against the gray concrete. Then, slowly, he tilted his head back, looking straight up at the ceiling of level 3, which was the floor of level 4. He raised an arm and pointed. Directly at spot 402. Directly at the gray Honda. The connection hit me like a physical blow. He wasn't here for me. He was here for it, the passenger. The thing that dripped. Then, the faceless man turned toward the camera. He raised a hand and waved. A slow, sarcastic wave. The monitor screen fizzled and went black. NO signal. Then Camo 4 went black. Then Camo 2. One by one, the intruder was blinding the building. I was left in the booth with nothing but the static of the dead screens. And then I heard it. A sound from the roof of the booth itself. Thump. Heavy. Deliberate. Someone had jumped onto the roof. The metal groaned under the weight. Dust trickled down from the ceiling tiles. Scrape ... Scrape ... It was crawling. "Elias ... A voice hissed from the ventilation vent. It sounded like dry leaves skittering on pavement. "Elias ... The view is better from up here. Come out." I grabbed the hammer again, backing against the door. "Go away," I screamed. The thing on the roof laughed a wet, gurgling sound. "I can't go away, Elias. I am the building. I am the concrete. And I am very, very hungry." A monitor flickered back to life. Level 3. The car was gone, but in the center of the room, a boombox sat on the floor, playing a distorted song. And next to it, a woman in a red coat was curled up on the floor, screaming, "Help me. Please. God. Someone help me." It was a trap, I knew it. But the scream was so real, it tore at my humanity. I couldn't stay in the booth. The thing on the roof was going to break in. I unlocked the door and ran. I ran into the snow, toward the stairwell door, toward the scream. The stairwell was a vertical tunnel of freezing air and echoing menace. It smelled of rust and ancient urine, a smell that stuck to the back of my throat. I climbed the stairs 2 at a time, the metal grates ringing under my boots, clutching the hammer so hard my knuckles turned white. The music from level 3 grew louder as I ascended a warped, slowed down version of Earth Angel that sounded like a funeral dirge. Earth Angel ... Earth Angel. Will you be mine ... The voice warbled, dipping in pitch, sounding like a demon drowning in syrup. Mixed with the music were the woman's sobs. Please ... It's cold. It's so cold ... I reached the door to level 3. The number 3 stenciled on the wall looked like it had been painted in dried blood. I took a deep breath, gripped the handle, and pushed. The door swung open with a groan. Level 3 was a nightmare landscape. The floor wasn't concrete. It was covered in inches of black ash that swirled around my ankles like dry water. The lighting was strobe-like, flickering violently. In the center of the vast empty space, the boombox sat blaring its song, and there, near a pillar, was the woman. She wore a bright red wool coat, her back to me, shaking violently. Miss I called out, stepping onto the ash. We have to go now. She didn't turn. She just pointed a shaking hand toward the ceiling. It's leaking, she whispered. Her voice changed, dropping an octave, becoming guttural. It's leaking ... Elias. I froze. Turn around, I commanded, raising the hammer. The figure began to turn, but her feet didn't move. Her torso twisted around with the sickening sound of wet celery snapping, rotating 180 degrees while her legs stayed planted. The front of her coat fell open. There was no body inside. No chest, no stomach, no heart. Just a hollow rib cage filled with the same black ash, and suspended in the center by wires of flesh was a pulsing speaker cone. The voice wasn't human, it was broadcast. Earth Angel ... double quotes, the speaker crooned. The mannequin thing let out a screech of electronic feedback and lunged at me. It didn't run, it skittered on all fours, its limbs bending backward, moving like a spider. I turned to run back to the stairwell, but the door slammed shut and the lock clicked. Trapped. I swung my flashlight beam at the creature. It recoiled, hissing, covering the speaker in its chest. Light. It hated the light. I used the beam like a whip, keeping it at bay, and sprinted for the spiral ramp leading up. The only way out was up. I scrambled up the incline, my boots slipping on the ash, breathing in the toxic dust. I burst onto level 4, expecting the open roof and the night sky. Instead, I hit a wall of humidity. Level 4 was enclosed. A heavy concrete ceiling pressed down low, dripping with condensation. The air smelled of copper and ozone. And there, in the center of the impossible room, sat the gray Honda Accord, spot 402. It was pristine, no snow. The engine was off, but the dome light was on. I approached it mesmerized. My walkie-talkie, the one I had dropped in the booth, was sitting on the back seat. It crackled to life. Elias, ... Look up. I remembered rule number 4. Do not look at the ceiling. I felt a warm drop hit my cheek. I wiped it away. It was red. Blood fresh and warm. Another drop hit the hood of the car. Plink. Then the sound of wet tearing came from directly above me. I couldn't stop myself. I looked up. Clinging to the concrete ceiling like a bat was a massive, pulsating tumor of flesh. It was made of limbs, human arms and legs fused together in a chaotic ball end. Dozens of faces, eyes blinking, mouths opening and closing silently. It saw me look. It smiled with 100 mouths, and then it let go. I dove to the side just as the amalgamation slammed into the concrete where I had been standing. The impact shook the floor plates, sounding like a car crash. The creature didn't land solid. It landed like a water balloon filled with meat, splattering, and then immediately reforming. It began to unfurl, rising up on mismatched legs, a tower of nightmares. It let out a sound that vibrated in my teeth, a low, mechanical hum that perfectly mimicked the sound of the booth heater fan. It was mocking me. It was learning. I scrambled backward, crab walking across the floor, frantically looking for a place to hide. The creature swiped a massive arm made of braided muscle, smashing the concrete barrier into dust. I saw a metal door marked electrical about 20 yards away. I sprang to my feet and sprinted, my lungs burning. The creature roared a sound of twisting metal and gave chase. I reached the door, threw it open, and threw myself inside, slamming the deadbolt home just as a heavy weight crashed against the other side. The door buckled, but held. I was in a small, cramped closet filled with humming breaker boxes and thick cables, but I wasn't alone. In the corner, tangled in the wires, was a man. He was wearing a security uniform. It was Corbin, but he looked wrong. His skin was translucent, blue veins pulsing underneath. One of his feet was missing, the pant leg pinned up. He looked at me with wild, bloodshot eyes. "You brought it here," he shrieked. "You brought the light." "Corbin," I gasped. "I thought you left." "Left?" He laughed maniacally. "Nobody leaves. I'm the backup. I'm the spare parts." The door behind me groaned. The wood began to splinter. A pale hand squeezed through the crack, fingers groping blindly. "It tracks the photons," Corbin screamed, kicking at me. "Kill your light. Kill the garage." "What are you talking about?" I yelled, trying to hold the door shut with my shoulder. "The power." Corbin pointed to the main breaker box. It wasn't metal inside. The panel was open, revealing a beating organ, a heart made of muscle and wire. A human femur bone acted as the main switch. "It feeds on the energy. Cut the feed and it goes blind." "Do it, Elias." The door gave way. The amalgamation poured into the room, a landslide of flesh. It ignored me and lunged for Corbin. It engulfed him, absorbing him instantly. I heard his ribs crack, heard his final scream cut short as he became part of the mass. The creature turned its many eyes toward me, pupils dilating in the beam of my flashlight. It was going to eat me next. I turned to the biomechanical breaker box. I grabbed the bone handle. It was warm. I felt a pulse under my hand. I screamed and yanked it down. Snap. The bone broke. The heart stopped beating. The blue sparks died. The garage went pitch black. The amalgamation screamed in confusion, thrashing in the dark, unable to see me without the light. I dropped to the floor and crawled, slithering past its wet, stinking skin, escaping back out onto the floor of level 4, which was now dissolving into mist, as the reality of the garage began to fail without power. The darkness was absolute, but the silence was gone. The garage was groaning, a structural death rattle. I limped down the ramp, guiding myself by the wall. I reached level 2, and saw a faint blue glow. Inside the stairwell door, a child in a yellow raincoat stood with his back to me. "Tag," he whispered, turning around to reveal a faceless void. He shined a flashlight in my face. The beam acted like a laser designator. Above me, the blind amalgamation roared in triumph and crashed through the ceiling, dropping down to pursue me. I vaulted over the railing to level 1, shattering my ankle on the landing. Pain white-hot and blinding shot up my leg. I dragged myself through the snow to the ruined booth. I found the gun. I found a note about Rule 6. One must stay. I realized the sacrifice didn't have to be me. I dug up the frozen corpse of the real Corbin from the snowbank. He had been dead for weeks and fed him to the monster. As the amalgamation dragged the body away, distracted, I climbed the fence and fell into the street. I walked toward the city lights, weeping with relief. I found a gas station. I went inside to call for help, but the shelves were stocked with white boxes labeled candy. The clerk was a suit filled with snow. "There is no outside," the snowman said. "There is only the garage." The station walls fell away. I was back on level 1. I had never left. The city lights were a reflection. I was trapped in a loop. Despair nearly killed me then, but anger saved me. I remembered the rule about the basement. Structural integrity compromised. It was a warning to protect the heart. If I couldn't leave, I would kill it. I limped down the ramp into the flooded basement. Level B1 was a swamp of black water. Level B2 was a ribcage of white stone. I reached the hatch of level B3. I shot the lock with the last bullet in the revolver. I entered the core. It was a cathedral of gears and meat. Suspended over a bottomless pit was a massive engine, pumping black oil into the ceiling. Standing there was an older version of myself, the elder Elias. He told me the truth. We are the batteries. The garage needs a consciousness to dream the nightmare. "You can take the shift," he said, offering me the clipboard, "or you can burn it down." "What happens if I burn it?" I asked. "The loop breaks," he said. "The monster dies, but the things in the pit, they get out." I looked into the pit. Ancient, shapeless shadows swirled there. They were waiting, but I couldn't let the garage keep eating people. I couldn't be the battery. "I'm clocking out," I said. I jumped. I threw myself into the grinding gears of the engine. The pain of the gears wasn't physical, it was existential. I was torn apart atom by atom. My consciousness expanded, merging with the building. I became the concrete. I felt the snow on the roof. I felt the amalgamation crawling in my veins. I felt the elder Elias fading away. I was the garage, and I hated myself. I focused all that hate into a single thought. Purge. I triggered the self-destruct. The engine detonated. The thermal flare incinerated the amalgamation, boiling the flesh from its bones. The levels collapsed, pancaking down. The loop shattered. Reality snapped back into place. I was ejected from the dying mind of the building, launched upward on a column of fire and debris. I hit the snow outside the fence, broken, burned, but alive. I woke up to sirens, real sirens. The sun was rising, a pale purple bruise on the horizon. The garage was a smoking crater. The police found me. They found the gun. They found Corbin's frozen body and assumed he died in the collapse. They called it a gas leak. I spent months in the hospital. I never told them the truth. I moved to Arizona, to the desert, where there are no basements and no snow. I thought I was free, but energy cannot be destroyed. Last night I heard the tapping on my window. Tap, drag, tap, drag. I live on the second floor. This morning I found a handprint on my dusty windshield, and words written in the dust. Rule number 1, don't sleep. I realized then, I didn't kill the haunting. I set it free. It was attached to the building, but the building is gone. Now, it's attached to the survivor. It's attached to me. My nose is bleeding onto the keyboard now. The coffee shop is going silent. The barista is freezing in place. The walls are turning gray. The garage is here. It's overlaying itself onto reality. I wrote this to warn you, but I made a mistake. By reading this, you know the rules. You know the name of the entity. You are part of the loop now. I'm going to stand up and walk out the door. I won't be in Arizona anymore. I'll be back on level 1. My shift is starting, but you are the relief watchman. If you hear scratching tonight, don't look. Good luck.